Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tech Talks. So, I get a question a lot whenever I do intros to Azure or intros into how to use the platform. And it's usually very basic. It's why go cloud? What is cloud computing? What is it good for? Why are we making this change? And that's one of the first questions everybody has. So one of the things I wanted to do was let's take some time and let's look at the advantages of cloud computing and kind of talk about why people want to go into the cloud, what the uses are. So let's take a look at the top benefits of cloud computing. So if you look here, you'll see we have Azure puts out this page, right? So it's the top benefits of cloud because of the shift from going traditional business or traditional way of business thinking into cloud computing. So there's 7 top reasons to do this. And the first one, of course, is cost. Everybody wants to talk about cost. In a traditional environment, you would have your servers that support your office in your office. You would just have a server room somewhere, a network room, and all your stuff would be in there. With that, you have to buy the equipment, the computing equipment, the servers, the racks, the networking gear, the wiring, special electrical circuits go in, special air conditioning considerations, environmental controls. And then, of course, you have to have the high-speed internet. So with today's environment where a lot of people are working from home because of COVID, right, that makes it a bigger challenge because now you need to put in remote access and you end up paying for things like public IP addresses, setting up VPNs. So this becomes a bigger problem. So when you go into cloud computing, you don't have to buy any of that. It's a shift from going with capital expense into operational expense. So since you don't have to buy the servers and depreciate those over the number of years that you're going to have them, you go into an operational expense where you're paying a lower amount in order to have the same capabilities or sometimes more capabilities because all of those things are taken care of by Azure. Microsoft is paying for servers and racks and data centers, and they're taking care of all that. And they have, I think, 54 regions all over the world where they do this, and usually 2 to 3 data centers per region. So instead of paying this massive cost, you're paying a smaller cost, and you're only doing it for that month, right? So that means if you only need a server for a month or a day, you can get that. And then you only pay for it for that time. When you're done with it, you just turn it off, delete it, get rid of it. The next piece of it comes into scaling. So elasticity is a big thing when you go into cloud computing. And what that means is pretty much how scalable are you, right? If you need 1 server today and you need 10 servers tomorrow, how long is that going to take you? Now, when you look at that, what you want to look at is what the ability to scale is. So people think about that. They always, it's hard to imagine. So let's look at a use case. A use case would be, say you have a company and you run a call center. So today you have 100 employees. Right? COVID hits and now everybody's working from home. So everybody is running a remote desktop session, connecting to a server and getting their own little virtual computer. Sounds great. Okay. Everybody can work from home. They can work in the office, wherever they're at, and they can do what they need to do. Well, you get a massive contract. Now you need to go hire 900 people. How are you going to handle the infrastructure needs of having to go from 100 people one day to 1,000 people the next day? Well, with Azure, you can take what's called a Windows virtual desktop and you set those up. People connect in, they get a remote desktop session, everything's great. They can do what they need to do. But if you have 200 people show up for work tomorrow, it doesn't matter, because you have the infrastructure back in to say when the server performance and resources get to a certain point, make a new server. Just keep adding on, and it will keep scaling. So you'll end up just building out. And then at the end of the day, when you say, okay, well, everybody's gone home, nobody's in the office, nobody's working, so we don't need all these servers. So let's collapse them down. So you could go from having 3 servers at 8 o'clock in the morning to having 900 servers at lunchtime. And that's doable. It's not a hard thing at all. So that's where the elasticity comes from. You get the right amount of resources at the right time, and you don't over provision things. You don't have to go buy servers and wait for them to be delivered. You can just have it when you need it, and when you don't need it, you get rid of it. And there's even services out there like CDN that delivers content. So if you needed to have something available globally, say you needed to have files available globally for people to download, you could do that. You know, say your company is an app developer, right? So you could use Azure DevOps and Kubernetes in order to develop and do continuous integration, continuous deployment on your apps. But then you could host those apps on the CDN, so people could download the application to install it, and it wouldn't matter where they're at. It would just find the closest server to them, and there'd be one in each region, and then they could download it. Faster speeds, better quality service to your customers, things like that. The next piece that we want to talk about is performance, right? So it's great to think you can have this stuff cheaper and you can, be able to scale and shrink and expand, do all these things. But what are you sacrificing for it? Do you still have the performance that you need? So one of the biggest advantages to cloud computing is you have this worldwide network of data centers that you can rely upon with fast and efficient hardware, where Microsoft has made sure things are up to date. They have adequate hardware to accomplish what you need. And since they're on such a large scale, the needs they're looking at are usually things far beyond what you need to do for your company. Right? So you can even provision supercomputers in Microsoft Azure. It's a service. You ever needed a supercomputer? Well, now you can get one. So performance is there. All you have to do is tell it what you need, and then you can set the scaling capabilities, that elasticity, in order so that if you are using more resources and it's starting to slow down, you can have it automatically scale up. Right? And that's how these things work together in order to do it. Your performance starts slowing down, you need more resources. Okay, we're going to scale up. When you don't need it anymore, we're going to scale down, saving money when you're not using it. Right? Making those resources available for other people. So it all kind of fits together. The other piece that goes in with performance comes speed. We always want to know about speed, right? So in a traditional environment, you would have a VMware host that would hold your virtual servers. And if you needed to add 100 virtual servers, you would go tell your IT guy, and he would go in there and start cloning and building out servers and getting them ready and patching them. Okay, that sounds great. That could take them a couple hours, depending on how you guys are set up. Or it could take them a couple days, a couple weeks, depending on what kind of workload you're giving them. Or you can do it with Azure, and then you can just build it out and say, I need these kind of servers. I need 100 of them. You click the button, go get a cup of coffee. Right? The time it takes to do that is a huge efficiency increase because you don't actually have to go through and clone and patch and get everything up to date and get it configured for you. You can just click a few buttons, tell them what you want, and then Azure takes care of it on the back end. And they just send you a little notification in your Azure portal when it's done. Right? And usually it takes a few minutes. You know, if you're doing a lot, say you need to provision 1,000, then yeah, it's going to take a little longer for it to complete those 1,000. So that brings us into productivity, right? So this kind of overlaps, right? The speed of getting things done is a lot faster, and then you don't have to have your IT staff taking care of it. So this falls right in with productivity. You don't have to do a rack and stack. You don't have to unbox hardware and put it into the rack and then patch it and then configure the OS and then get everything up to date. You don't have to do any of those tasks, so that frees up your IT staff on doing other things that they need to do. And let's face it, IT staff is always slammed with work because we're the backbone, we're the infrastructure that makes everything work. So you don't want to waste time. You want to increase that productivity, increase efficiency so that you can get more things done and get the right things done. So that brings into the other aspect of it is security. So the way Azure works, they're already set up for security. They already have the policies in place, the technology controls in place. There's even a security center that you can use to monitor and remediate your own tenant. And they're hosting things for, world governments. They're the United States government's doing a lot of stuff with the DoD in Azure, private companies, banks, hospitals. You have all kinds of companies and industries working there that have already gone through. So Microsoft spends, I think, close to $1 billion a year on security. And you can get the reports and everything you need to do for your audits. Everything's already readily available for you. So the overall posture is very good. And then if you run into problems, you always have somebody you can reach out to help you, remediate if something's not right, answer questions if you need to. They have a whole team of staff that help with that. So that falls right into our last point, which is reliability. So this is where we talk about backups. Nobody likes to hear it, but we all have to do it. You have to back up your data. You have to have disaster recovery and business continuity plans. Because let's face it, if you get hit with ransomware, then I think the average cost for recovery is about $2 million per incident. And it takes a huge hit to your reputation, business. So that's where cloud computing has a major advantage because you can do these data backups. You can do the disaster recovery plans. You can have everything backed up with redundancy all over the world. If you want to, you can have all of your servers replicated to all the different regions around the world. That's very excessive, what you would probably need to do, but it's there. And if you run into issues, if you're working in Azure, your file server goes down, you just spin up a new server and attach the hard drive. Attach your storage device. That's it. So it makes it very advantageous because it gives you all of these options for multi-redundancy in the cloud provider's network. So those are our 7 big advantages to cloud computing: cost, global scale or elasticity, performance, speed, productivity, security, and reliability. The next thing we want to kind of touch on is the different types of cloud computing. So everybody talks about it, but there's basically 3 types. There's public, private, and then there's kind of a hybrid. Public that's Azure, AWS, Microsoft, or Google Cloud. all the big cloud service providers. They have data centers, you're going to pay for them, and then kind of put all your stuff there. So private cloud is where you have a data center that you use exclusively for one business, right? You have your own personal data center, right? So that's a type of private cloud. It's different from these shared data centers. Shared data centers fall more into the public cloud. So if you look at the places where you can rent rack space and those kind of things, those are public clouds. And then you have hybrid clouds. So this is kind of a mix of them. You can have public and private working together, connected, and it gives you some more flexibility in different deployment options. So this would be something similar to you have your own data center, but you also have some things in Azure, right? That's kind of what it's looking at. Then we move into the types of services. This is where everybody always hears infrastructure as a service, software as a service, those kind of things. So this is what we're talking about. Infrastructure as a service is that's the bare bones one that kind of people think about, right? Having a server in the cloud. That's infrastructure as a service. You're renting compute time and storage space, right? Network devices and connectivity from a cloud provider. So that's infrastructure. Then you get into platform as a service, which this really goes more into the DevOps world, where you're going to have certain services out there, and they're typically on-demand environments for developing, testing, delivering, those kind of things. So this is where things like Kubernetes come in. You don't have to worry about setting up or managing the underlying infrastructure. You just worry about your development, right? Then you have things like serverless computing. So this comes in play, things like SQL as a service or Azure Files. So when you look at something like Azure Files, right, that's serverless computing. I just want storage. I don't need to do any of the other things. I want to have a storage location that I can put files, and as it grows, I'll pay for it, right? Only using resources when I need it. So that's a form of serverless. You can do the same thing with SQL, where you can just host your database. In Azure, you don't need a server to do it. You just put the database there and then connect to it. So they handle everything on the back end of that. All you need to know is you got your database, and here's how you connect. Then you can do whatever you need to do with it. Then you get software as a service. This is the one most people know about, but probably don't realize they know about it. This is things like Office 365, where you have email and you get Office applications and things like that. You don't have to go and ask for an email server or an application server or anything like that. You just say, I want this many mailboxes, and I want Word and Excel and those kind of things. And then Microsoft takes care of everything on the back end. So that's kind of the basics of cloud computing. All right, then you can get into the uses of cloud computing, but honestly, the use cases for going to cloud are so vast. Right? There's just so many of them that it would take forever to go through some of those. But the basics, like if you want to think about it, right? The use cases for going, you need connectivity, you need high reliability, right? High availability, disaster recovery, you've got applications you want to test and build, environments you need to build and throw away and rebuild over and over again. It's a no-brainer. So I hope this helps explain kind of what cloud computing is, how it can be used. And stay tuned in our future videos. We're going to start digging into the portal and how you actually do things. So if you haven't, subscribe to our page, or check out our website at randybordeaux.com. Thank you.